Welcome to RainierAvenueRadio.World special programming.
I'm Virginia Wright. I'm the Executive Director of Rainier Valley Historical Society. And this is a special collaboration with Rainier Avenue World that is part of our monthly Dismantling Racism series. And we have a panel discussion, and moderating the panel will be Tony Benton.
Well, thank you, Virginia. Welcome, everyone, to RainierAvenueRadio.World. We are excited and happy to be in celebration of Black History Month and to take this opportunity to discuss a topic that I think you are going to, at the very least, find interesting. There are a number of different adjectives that I can use. We are going to be discussing today experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. Experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. Joining me will be a couple of folks who will share their experiences, and we'll also talk to some members of the audience as well. And now these experiences may be varied. They may be similar to yours. We'll talk more about that, because when you talk about the concept of Blackness, that itself lends itself to questions, what that may mean. And so we'll find out from our panelists what that means, and you can decide for yourself what experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley means to you, to them, and to us as a community. So I'd like to start off by introducing Mr. Kelly O'Brien. Give us a little bit of background. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tony?
Excellent. Give us some background, first of all, on yourself, where you grew up. We'll start with that. We'll get into some of the other questions first, but first just tell us about you, the individual, the person.
Thank you very much. Hi, I am Kelly O'Brien. I'm from Trinidad. And so, you know, today's Carnival Tuesday. So I'm missing out. And everybody's having a lot of fun back home. But I'm with them in spirit and jumping and waving in my mind, even as I speak right now. And I've been here in Seattle since 2008. I came here to get my law degree at Seattle University School of Law. And I've since worked in the community. I actually used to be client manager for Rainier Avenue Radio up to the end of last year, where we brought you guys on board, and I was really happy to actually help shepherd that process for you guys. So really proud to be here, and thank you again, Tony.
And also, we have a student in high school, Taylor Corrine Benton. Taylor Corrine. Full disclosure, she is my daughter. But again, a high school student who has lived in this area, who has her own perspective. So Taylor Corrine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Taylor Corrine. If you cannot pronounce that after like at least 10 tries, you can say TC, but you know, try to say Taylor Corrine. I go to Seattle Academy. I am 15 years old, and I have lived in Seattle for my whole life. And currently I am part of a nonprofit called The Other Six, which is for helping, at least on record, 6 people who are deeply affected by a loved one's suicide or a close one's suicide, and our goal is to help those people. And then I'm also starting a multi-racial association at SAS, or BSU at SAS, because there is a lack of diversity and representation, since I believe only about out of the 1,000 students, including the middle school and high school, only 31% are minorities. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. That is our panel. We will also take questions of the audience. Experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. So I know a lot of you out there who are listening right now have your opinions, interested to hear this conversation. You can answer these questions yourself, although we may not be able to hear you, but you can think about your response. And so I'd like to start off with a question for both of you, and we're going to have similar questions, and we'll see if your experiences are relatable, the same. Again, experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. I'm also going to answer these questions myself. So you'll have my perspective on it as well. And so, Kelly, since we started with you, I'm going to put the first question to you as well. You already mentioned how long you've been here, but what is your history of living in Rainier Valley or Beacon Hill?
Thank you for asking, Tony. Yeah, I moved here with my family in 2008, and we were at the time literally escaping from Texas. I say escaping because Texas is we were in Dallas, but in Austin before that. But Texas itself is a very sort of oppressive sort of place. There really are cops everywhere, like in a way in which we moved up here and saw the baby blue cop cars and saw the cops around and were like, wow, they're not nearly as scary as the cops in Dallas. So it was really palpable. But that whole feeling of like, we got to get out of this place happened. And we came up to the Pacific Northwest, and I actually got enrolled into Seattle University School of Law. And we ended up moving down to the end of Rainier Avenue, up 65th, up the hill. And we actually got sort of a deal on a place to live because it was very difficult to find a place. But happened that someone at the school had a parent who had a property. And so we were able to luck out, and it was just me and my daughter and my wife, and we just sort of started out down there, you know. We lived there for a while, a couple of years, and then we ended up moving to Beacon Hill for the sole purpose of getting our daughter enrolled in the international program there. She had been one of the bright spots in Austin when she was born, was she went to the Asian American Cultural Center down there for daycare. So she had Mandarin as a first language, basically. And so we wanted to get her into the program there. And that's how we ended up moving from Rainier Avenue to Beacon Hill, like Massachusetts. And then we moved up to 17th. And we were there for a long time. My son was born in 2011, and we left there. He was born a week after we moved into our place in Beacon Hill. And then we moved out literally at his, like the week after his 4th birthday. So we were there for 4 years and ended up moving to West Seattle. And, you know, the reasons for moving were pretty simple. It was just really too expensive to live there anymore. It's a big house. It was like heavy utility bills, and rent was high, and there's a lot of pressure, and we were like, you know, we had to like leave.
You lived quite a few places on the corridor of Rainier. So with that in mind, every place that you lived, whether it was Beacon Hill, whether it was South Seattle, Rainier Beach area towards Skyway, were the communities the same? Did you feel the same? Did you notice any difference?
Yeah, I noticed a difference between, I guess, Beacon Hill and South Rainier. You know, being from Trinidad, my background is multicultural, and I'm very receptive to differences in sort of like racial and cultural presence in a particular place. So I find that moving to Beacon Hill moved us from like less of a sort of African immigrant area to more of a Hispanic immigrant area. And but that was probably it. It's a little bit more diverse in Beacon Hill because you do have sort of different populations, Vietnamese folks, you know, Spanish folks, and Black folks were living there. But at the same time, it's not that much different from South Rainier because my landlord on South Rainier was a Vietnamese woman, you know, so. And yeah, I just, you know, you see the same sort of populations, but just maybe a little difference in concentration.
Did you feel as equally comfortable in both environments? Did you at all feel that somehow your Blackness came into play in a different way, depending on the community that you were in, whether it was an immigrant community or an African immigrant community or an Asian immigrant community or a Black community when you were living in the Rainier Valley area? Did your Blackness come into play in a way that caused you to reflect on who you were, depending on which community you were in.
I mean, it did. I mean, that's the short answer. I come at Blackness through a lot of different angles, but being Black in this area, I mean, I could say first off that like, I always felt actually in this area along the corridor, just fine and at home where I was. People were nice. The place was nice. I mean, Beacon Hill was really pretty. You know, here it's a little bit more. Yeah, there's a lot more sort of stuff going on down here in terms of dilapidation. But I always felt quite fine. Like I always felt safe. I always felt all right. I mean, my Blackness, I've always had it with me, and I've had it with me in all these different settings. And to say that, like, when I had to like think about my Blackness in that kind of way, it wasn't when I was down here. It was when I was at school or when I was working, you know, when I was downtown.
So in this community, you just felt like you were always who you were.
I was fine. Yeah, yeah. And I felt like we did belong. It was interesting. There are sorts of lateral interactions that go on between folks from different racial populations. That could sometimes be negative, but I want to say 1 time out of 10, you know, 9 times out of 10, it is very like, it was good to feel like there was some place to call home where, I mean, perhaps, you know, folks would say it wasn't safe, etc., blah, 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 but it was fine by me. As far as I was concerned, it was fine by me, and it was fine, and it felt like home. And it felt fine, like in terms of community, like immigrant folks, I mean, that's the best way to make me feel at home, honestly. Like lots of other immigrants around, like makes me understand that, like, hey, I'm not alone.
All right, we're gonna take a dive into that a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. We're gonna go for another perspective here. And Taylor Corrine, same question. For you, 15 years old, what is your history of living in Rainier Valley?
So I've always lived in Rainier Valley. I basically just lived down the street when growing up, I just remember having lots of family barbecues with like local neighbors who I considered family, like my Uncle Miles who lived next door, or my Auntie Teresa who lived like a few houses down. But growing up, I realized that the culture, I guess, in our neighborhood was changing, and it was turning less from a community more to an area where people just live to live. And it made me feel not necessarily uncomfortable, but just weird about going from, I guess, this big happy family to now just another house on the block. And especially Columbia City, where I just remember like lots of mom and pop shops where it was more typically Black, but now it's more considered a white neighborhood, and it's a different thing being a Black kid here now. It doesn't seem like it's meant for like a Black kid hangout spot like I guess it used to be. Now it's just more for white moms who want Jamba Juice.
Okay. You know, I will comment on that as well. Having grown up here, I remember Columbia City as a place at one point in time where if you weren't Black, you weren't here. There were a few places that were, I remember it being an all-white place. I remember it being a very multicultural place. I definitely remember it being an area where African-American people were. And then I began to see it change and evolve. I never felt different. I never felt like I didn't belong. I didn't feel like I didn't belong when it was an all-white place and I moved into the community. I didn't feel like I didn't belong when it became a Black place, although I felt other people would refer to Columbia City as an area where it wasn't safe. I never felt differently. And then as it began to change and evolve, once again, I didn't feel differently, but there were times when I would walk into a shop and I would feel as though my presence was somehow setting off an alarm. And for me, that was something that I felt was not the right attitude that a business owner should have about this community. Well, I'm sure that they had their perspective as well. But for me, it was a dramatic change in Rainier Valley. again, as the community in Columbia City continued to gentrify, which is what happens in some instances, I did notice that I felt that there were less people who looked like me. And to this point, at one point in living in Columbia City, I was never surprised to see a person who was Black. Now in Columbia City, I am always, oh, there's another Black person. That wasn't the case before. And even outside of our doors, if I look outside and you watch who walks by, you will see predominantly white folks. That's just a difference. And so for me, in my Blackness, I don't notice it in a way that I feel like oppressed or somehow I feel as though I'm not welcome. It's just something that I notice. And I wonder if people notice it about me, which leads me to this next question. And I'll start with Taylor Corrine. Do you identify as Black? And if not, what do you call yourself?
Around Black people, I say I identify as Black, but it happened more so when I started to attend SAS. I started to identify more as a mixed person because I know.
Explain what SAS is. And
SAS is a private high school and middle school located primarily in capital city, like in the center of it, and it's Seattle Academy of Arts and Sciences, and it's predominantly more focused towards art. And like I said earlier, it has a larger white population than person of color population. And I noticed once I attended SAS that my vocabulary changed and even like how I talk changed. So like earlier, I noticed I was talking more like this, but when I attended SAS, I talked more like this, and I noticed I identified more as mixed because it made them feel more comfortable, and it made the teachers feel more comfortable, and the looks decreased from when I walked down the hallway, because in the middle school, I was the only girl or only person really who had more textured hair, who I didn't always have my hair in braids, or I didn't have my hair flat ironed. And I noticed that I would receive different tones of voice from teachers, and they'd be surprised if I'd get a B on a test or anything like that. And even from the surrounding Black families, the few Black families who had students who did attend SAS, they said, don't say aggressive because, that would reflect badly on all of us. Instead, say this or this. So by saying I'm mixed, I feel like I've, in a sense, whitewashed myself in a way to make them feel more comfortable, when instead I should feel more comfortable at a quote unquote community that I'll be there until like I'm 18.
Interesting. Kelly, do you identify as Black?
Yes, I do identify as Black.
Okay.
Excuse me. But, I really come at Blackness from a lot of different angles. There's a term, it used to be popular back in the day when I was in graduate school still in Texas, strategic essentialism. I like the notion of strategically claiming identities that are available to me when I need them at the time that I need them. So I'm Black, and as I interact with the world, everybody looks at me and sees that I'm Black. But I'll give you an example. If I'm just remembering, when I wish all my students in my class of East Indian descent that are Hindu or that are following what's going on, and I wish them happy Diwali, and they're surprised at how I know that, it's because of my multicultural background. It's because I have a family tree that is multiracial. And so I like to call and pull on knowledge that is sort of outside of Blackness, if that even exists, because this conversation sort of goes deeper than that. But like, I will call upon those founts of knowledge in times when I need that fount of knowledge. Now, that's step one of the answer. Step two, we all Black. Plain and simple, end of story. I think today an article came out about Egyptian DNA analysis, where they proved that just, it found that only 17% of the genetic material is Arab. and the vast majority was North African. And every single Black person that I spoke to about that said, well, we knew that, in that conversation. So in a lot of ways, I think, and then the other day, there's another article about Cheddar Man from Britain, early British, with dark skin. Brother's skin is crispy brown skin, and so I'm like, I am of the philosophical and intellectual opinion that we're all Black. Just some of us don't want to admit it. And so I kind of come at Blackness in those different ways.
Okay. Once again, you're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.World. This Dismantling Racism series going on right now is Experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley, and it's brought to you by the Rainier Valley Historical Society. We're very excited and happy to be hosting this event, having this discussion about experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that you have to be Black? No, this is a conversation that is open to everyone. And so experiencing Blackness means your personal experience, how it impacts you, how it affects you. Is it something that affects you? Is it something that is part of your daily life? Is it part of your experience? Do you, when you come to Rainier Valley, which is known as a very multicultural area, do you pay attention to the way that you interact with the different ethnicities? And in this particular instance, I'm talking about Black. So what does it mean to be Black? We heard Taylor Queen define what your idea of Blackness. We didn't get to that with you. What does it mean to be Black? We heard Kelly say what it means to be Black. Yes, I'm Black. Then it was, these are the reasons and how I interact, and I have my Blackness and how I carry it with me and how I view the world. For you, what does it mean to be Black? What is your Blackness? What does it mean, the idea of Blackness, Taylor Green?
For my current generation who has grown up around social media and being surrounded by all these electronics, I'd say today being Black is more of a hashtag that is being like that is widespread around the world, is always trending, and is more a culture that is constantly being taken away from and is used for the gain of pop stars like Miley Cyrus, who said she disowned rap after she gained all this popularity. However, I'd say that if we're going for the positive of being Black, it's being able to own a history that has been negative in the past, but has transcended through multiple generations, is now in a place where I can safely go to a mostly white school and for the most part feel comfortable and safe in my surroundings and in my own body, basically. And I feel that by saying I am Black, I have taken a power away from this negative aspect and given it back to myself as, yes, I am Black. I have my hair. I have my skin. I am who I am.
All right. Two different experiences. And so for those of you listening, for those of you in the audience, again, we're having the discussion of experiencing Blackness. And I know for some folks, that may seem like some monolithic idea that there is a singularity to Blackness. And we're going to explore that even further today by talking to our panel, Ms. Kelly O'Brien, and to also our high school student, Taylor Corrine. Kelly, one of the things that I want to discuss with you when we're talking about Blackness, there are some things that are discussed within the Black community that I know that you're familiar with. African immigrant. Yeah. United States descendant of slave. Mm-hmm. When you hear those particular terminologies, do you accept that you have to categorize yourself into one of those as a Black person, considering that I don't know whether you consider yourself to be a United States descendant of slaves. I don't know whether you consider yourself to be an immigrant. But those are, again, right now, when you're thinking of blackness and when people are identifying black, it falls into a couple of categories. And I'm not going to get too much into this right now, but then there is also, as Taylor Green was mentioning, then you have people who identify as mixed race. I am black and I am this, and I'm also black. So for you, when you answered that question about blackness, how do you think you fit into the eyes of the rest of the world, in particular in Rainier Valley?
Oh, I think, if that's the category that we're working with, the eyes of the rest of the world, then I'm taken for an African-American, U.S. descended black person by phenotypic presence. If I'm wondering about the gaze of others looking at me in this community or in this area. And I think, being observed as black means that you operate as black within the system within which you're being observed as black, where somebody's saying, hey, that's a black guy, right? On the other hand, if I'm not just basing it upon someone else's gaze, I am an immigrant. I'm also black. I don't consider myself a U.S. descendant of enslaved Africans in the United States, because historically I'm a descendant of enslaved Africans from the Caribbean. So, and I'm multiracial. I didn't have to do that DNA thing, but I did that DNA thing. Where I found out what the different categorizations of my DNA were from which places. I already knew my grandmother was East Indian, but doing the genetics, I realized, I did the math and realized, okay, she must have been mixed, because it's exactly half of what I expected the genetic makeup to be. I have this name O'Brien, and the legacy of slavery in the Caribbean creates possibilities like that. And I have like 15.5% white DNA. 13.3% of that is Irish. And 1.7% is Ashkenazi Jew, which, that happens. And the thing is, for people in the Caribbean, that's normal as normal can be. Like, it really is. It's like we are a mixed match, hodgepodge, bunch of folks on these islands, living, working, and surviving. And so that's that's where my blackness comes from. And the other thing is, I'm a former academic. I'm like highly educated. I mean, I used to teach, Caribbean literature and culture. History of the African diaspora is something that was part of my life. So, as you say things like African immigrant or U.S. descended from enslaved Africans, I'll say enslaved Africans, as opposed to African slaves, because there's a certain sensibility towards those topics that I have. And I know the different conversations that take place between different variations of blackness. But it's really because I've been able to have that sort of global view through the academy. But it makes for not only sort of interesting stories and interactions, but you can see conflicts that come to play because of the divisions that are created, the sort of divide and conquer scarcity mentality for resources thing that actually pit folks against each other, so that you'll have African immigrants sort of thinking about U.S. Americans a certain way and Caribbean folks. That kind of thing happens as well. But, the other thing is the commonality. The commonality could be so obvious. It could be, and it's not even just we look alike. It's wait a minute, is that African music sounding like soca music? Because it sounds just like soca music, but with a different language. That happens. That kind of stuff happens in Black communities, especially as we are a diaspora, as we are global, so.
Well, I'm going to ask you both this, and then I want to go to the audience too. If you guys have any questions you would like to ask or comment on what you're hearing here. So the question again is blackness, and what does it mean to be Black? So if my two panelists both agreed that they identify as Black, and I identify as Black, and what does it mean to have something in kind, to have a shared identity. Would you agree that one of the things that we all have in common, the three of us, without, of course, I know my daughter, but I would say that we all have, is that each of us, to some extent, believes that we can bond in understanding the systemic racism that takes place in this country. Would you say that that is part of our Blackness, both of you?
I'd say yes, because like you were saying, there's an unspoken bond, and no matter the background or experiences, there is a commonality of experiencing some type of microaggression or some type of racism, no matter how big or small.
Kelly?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, and at 15, to be aware of these things is something, Kelly, that I call not an option. It doesn't mean that you have to be aware of these things, but as you go through the world, understanding these things, again, that she just referred to as microaggressions and how they impact you and what you do in your daily life. So anybody from the audience, don't be bashful now, okay? Not yet. I will call on somebody, though, and we'll discuss this even further. But again, the topic is experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. So I'll tell you again, experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley, from my perspective, that means who are the people who look like me? And that may mean a shade. That may mean someone who appears to be brown skin. That may mean someone who appears to have the characteristics that I identify with of being Black. Again, brown skin. Blackness also means to me in Rainier Valley something that I hold in very high esteem. I think that it is important as a person who is part of this community, who is identified as Black, to be part of a proud legacy of African Americans who have contributed to the diversity that comes to this neighborhood, that were part of the integration of this neighborhood when there were covenants that did not allow folks to move into this neighborhood. And so to be here and be in this neighborhood and be in this community as one of the first Black families, I think it's important to let others who I meet and others who I know about the legacy of African Americans, about Blacks, about, again, I don't know how to necessarily use this terminology, Kelly, because it's always confusing. Do I call myself a descendant of a United States slave? Well, I know I'm not an immigrant, but at some point there was something involved there. And, you know, Kelly, you did your DNA, and I don't know if that helps you with some of those questions, you know, about where you belong. And Taylor Queen, you have a multicultural background. You're part Black, you're part Italian, you're part Irish. You're, again, like a lot of people who identify as Black, there are a lot of things that go into your makeup. So I'm just going to randomly grab somebody who I saw here who was the first person. And I'm going to ask you your name.
Kelly.
Okay, Kelly, tell me what so far. You said you came here to hear this conversation. So far, have you heard anything that makes you feel enlightened? Have you felt like, well, this doesn't really engage or involve me? Or maybe just, I don't understand, or you know what, I can't wait till 9:30 so I can get up and get out of here and leave.
Oh, we're going all the way to 9:30? I didn't know that. Just kidding. Yeah, I really appreciate both of your reflections. I think they're both really interesting. I guess one thing that struck me was when Taylor Green, when you said that you noticed how you had started speaking differently after going to SAS. And so I was wondering more like how you felt about that and how, you know, if you feel like that's affected your relationship with your community here. And, you know, that's kind of like a big thing, you know, like, to notice that. And, yeah, that's something that struck me.
It was a big thing for me because, one, I transferred to SAS in the 8th grade where there had already been multiple cliques established. And I remember when first attending there, like for the first few weeks, I was like crying every night because I just hated it there because I felt like an outcast, and I didn't even feel accepted by like the few Black students at SAS. And I remember there was a coordinator who even told me, hey, you need to change yourself. You need to assimilate more into this environment so you can learn how to play the game. And after I, changed the pitch in my voice and everything, I started to question my quote unquote Blackness. And I was wondering, why can I not act like those other Black kids over there? Why am I like this type of Black person? And I started questioning, am I just that quote unquote white Black person where it's just Black enough, or it's just white enough, or I'm just diverse enough where it can be seen as a diverse school? And I remember I went to a summer program where it was for youth to be involved in social justice, and I was surrounded by all these Black kids, and it made me feel uncomfortable to be surrounded in an area where it was just people like me, and I felt maybe I'm not supposed to be here, maybe I'm not Black enough for this, maybe I'm too quote unquote white for this.
No, thanks for sharing. That's a really powerful reflection.
Okay. I know you just came in, but I'm going to share the mic with this gentleman. And okay, you're just here to listen. Well, I'll just ask you a question, because if you're just here to listen. What is it that brings you here to listen?
Well, yeah, I came to listen. I'm relatively new to the neighborhood. I moved to the Central District a couple of years ago, and closer to Columbia City last September. And I know there's a lot of white people that look like me that are moving to town, and it's coming at the expense of a lot of people moving out. And I just want to be someone who comes to events like this, who wants to learn, who wants to listen to people's experience, and and just try to be a part of the neighborhood. So that's why I'm here.
Well, thanks for coming. I'm not done with the audience yet. Again, the conversation is experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. What does it mean to you? Just tell us who you are, and then to be Black and what Blackness is. Just your perspective.
Well, my name is Buck Sheezy, and just being Black, it just is what it is. You grow up and they just tell you, you got to be ready and you got to be prepared. And certain things are going to happen to you that won't happen to other people. And when you have to know that as a kid, you just grow up and you have to take it for what it's worth and try to experience life the best way that you can. And just take advantage of all your opportunities and learning, and especially being from a diverse community, learning about the other communities around you so they can be an asset, not a liability.
So, who is your community? When you say my community, who do you identify as your community?
Well, like I said, just being from this area too, it's really diverse. So you could just say it could be Asians, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, other Blacks, Filipinos, Samoans. East Africans. The list goes on. This is one of the most diverse communities in the United States. So, growing up, being able to have access to that, it takes you a lot of different places because you get to meet a lot of different kind of people and be around a lot of different cultures.
All right, you're listening to Dismantling Racism. It's me, Tony B. If you agree or disagree with what you're hearing here, this is the reflection that you're getting from this community. This is the meaning that you're getting from these individuals about their experience of being Black. And so I will ask you the same question. Experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley, what comes to mind for you when you have to experience Blackness in Rainier Valley? And just start by telling us who you are.
My name is Marcella. I'm originally not from here. I'm from California, Southern California. So just in the time that I've been here, it's been a little over 15 years, but I've just really seen the neighborhood change. I I don't know. I guess it's good and bad, because you want your neighborhood, your community to flourish, but you also want it to be able to be a space where everybody feels safe and everybody can afford to live and everybody just has a good life or access to a nice life. So I think the biggest thing is that I've seen that change. I've seen more of a division, I guess, between what Black is and how people define Black or how they see it. So it seems that there's a lot of talk about, are you, well, just how do you see yourself? Are you define yourself as African American? Do you find yourself as Black? And sometimes it's just like, why do I have to define myself? Why can't I just be? Why do I have to say that I fit into this category or this category or this category? I just feel like sometimes it just shouldn't have to be that way. You should just be able to exist and live your life how you want to without a title, without being placed into a category.
So in Rainier Valley, do you consider yourself or do you define yourself as Black?
I do. I wear the skin every day. I can't take it off. It's what I see when I look in the mirror. It's something that I have both been proud of and sometimes not so proud of. As I get older, and especially with the political landscape, I find myself being way more proud to say that I'm Black, but as I define it, whatever it means to me, which is both negative and positive. But I'm proud to say I'm Black, and I find myself more identifying or trying to identify more with what I consider to be my Blackness.
And what is that? What is that definition of Blackness?
It depends on the day. It really does. It depends. It's when I hear people talking, when I see Black people doing things that themselves for, like when I see just things positive, when I see Taylor Corrine up there talking, when I see Kelly talking, and people just having the conversation, I'm proud to be part of what is defined as Black. But there are also times when I'm not, when I see behaviors that I kind of go, oh, okay, please, I don't want to be identified with that. I don't want people to see me as that kind of Black, which is unfortunate, but that's a reality.
So I think what you're talking about is sometimes, and I can talk to our panelists about this as well. Do you and I just gave you guys a breather. I'm going to talk to you too. And I know you came in a little bit, so I wanted you to get in on part of the discussion. So what I heard Marcella talking about, and Kelly and Taylor Corrine as a panelist, is this thing, and maybe we have this in common as part of our experiencing Blackness. Do you feel as though you are generally carrying the entire race with you when you go somewhere and someone sees you? Do you feel as though you are now representing your entire race, depending on how you act, depending on how you walk, depending on how you talk? Or do you feel as though, you know what, I know I'm not every Black person. I can't do anything about the way people are going to perceive me. Again, Marcella was saying, I don't want, somebody to think of me like that because I'm Black. So I'm going to put that question to both of you, and I'll start with you, Kelly. Do you feel as though you are carrying the mantle for all Black people when you walk into certain situations?
In certain situations, you can't help but be the person that is carrying the mantle for all of Blackness, whether or not that's fair. Again, there's a relationship here between how one is perceived and how one sees oneself. And, I know for a fact that all human beings are capable of all sorts of behaviors regardless of what their race is, right? So, stereotyping or saying gosh, those folks are acting a certain way, that's negative, that jumps to everyone's mind. That's, if it's a Black stereotype that jumps to everyone's mind, that's how ideology and stereotyping works. It's kind of insidious like that. It's in your brain. And of course I feel like that sometimes, right? Of course I feel negative towards behaviors that I perceive. I'd be like, oh gosh, why am I people doing X, Y, Z, But at the same time, I'm really aware that there are all these social forces at play that are dictating how people see blackness, dictating how people see me. There are all these stories that folks have had filtered to them through school, through their parents, through community, through TV, through movies, and gosh, yeah, sometimes I am carrying like the weight of all blackness on me. But like Marcella, like Marcella said, sometimes I don't want to have to deal with that, and sometimes I'm me. Sometimes I don't want to have to deal with the whole weight of the black world. But you know what? Sometimes I really do. Sometimes I want to turn around and be like, hey, that's right. This is how we move. And it's kind of like mirroring what Marcella said in some positive ways and stuff. I want to like say, look at this now, right? Look at this kind of behavior that's positive, or moving forward, or building community, or helping out, someone, and saying like, yeah, this is how we move too, So again, like for me, the idea is about strategically like picking like when you're going to wield this identity that they want to use against you, that you can use back against them.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong here. It started out like you had an answer, and then it sounded like, well, wait a minute, as you thought about it more, it was far more nuanced.
Yeah, well, what was your initial question again? If you tell me the initial question, I'll tell you how it developed.
Do you feel as though
I'm carrying the weight of
you were carrying the weight?
I felt like I could give a simple answer to that because it happens for sure. Like on a day-to-day basis, I will find myself in a situation where I'm the only one, and it means something. It means something where you're representing, where people are like looking to you and sort of seeing you as a stand-in.
What if they're not? What if they're not looking at you that way? Or do you feel like that's it just is. That's how they're looking at it.
Yeah, and I don't think folks can help it in the American context. I think that race is pervasive. Racism exists in overt and explicit ways, as well as implicit ways. And I don't think that by and large, black, white folks, Asian, I don't think people in America in this context cannot encounter someone without encountering their race as well. And like that, the shadow of all of 400, 500 years of ideological makeup being there in their head, I don't think that's possible.
And Taylor Corrine, as a sophomore in high school in a predominantly white and affluent high school, do you feel as though, again, you are looked upon by other students as this is, or she is, what is defined as black, and whatever she does is considered blackness, representing an entire race? Or do you feel the freedom to just be yourself, unassociated with your skin color at your school?
At SAS, I constantly feel like I have to represent a whole group.
It's Carnival Tuesday, I tell you.
Mardi Gras.
Fat Tuesday, celebration, All right.
Go ahead, Taylor Corrine.
At SAS, I feel like I constantly have to represent the black people at SAS, even though that shouldn't be my job, as I'm going through other stuff, and it should be no one's job to represent an entire group of people because you are only one person. But it's hard not to try to disassociate yourself with a stereotype when literally no matter what race you are, whatever you do, it becomes a stereotype. So at SAS, I try to strive for higher education because I know, at least for me personally, education is a path that will probably lead me to do bigger and better things and not have to worry about loans or, all these taxes and everything like that. But it's hard to try to get out of the mindset where I have to represent a whole group of people and being that black person who was asked questions like, so is everyone's hair greasy like this, or is it just yours? Like, why is your skin like that? And and yeah, that's the best way I could answer it, I think.
Okay. So I want to go to a couple members. I wanted to give y'all a little time to be here and absorb this. The discussion is experiencing blackness in Rainier Valley. What brings you here today?
what brings me here today, hearing conversations relating to other Black people, African Americans, being able to have a community where I am able to have conversations and also listen to other people's experiences in Rainier Valley. I went to Franklin High School growing up. I grew up in the Rainier Beach area. My name is Faven. I grew up here in the Rainier Beach area. My parents came and immigrated from Eritrea. We came to Seattle in 1986, and going to Franklin High School was, I think, the first time where I was aware that I'm different. There was individuals there saying things to me where I'm different in a case where I'm dressing like them, or it was more of a separating us, and I couldn't relate to the Africans, and I couldn't relate to the Black people, so I felt I was in between, and it was more of an eye-opener for me. And just being able to come here today and relate to other people and hear their experiences, it gives me power within me to be empowered.
Again, this is experiencing Blackness. So if those of you who are listening out there, or those who are in the room thought that what you were going to find today is answers to what it means to experiencing Blackness, well, you may be finding those. And for some of you who are listening, you may be saying, well, how is this all correlated? These are many different experiences. And so I will ask you again, is it Haven? Faven. When you hear this term, Blackness, being Black, what does that mean to you?
Having a lot of experiences of becoming someone different. Being Black here in Rainier Valley is being someone, I don't know, it's just so many different things. It's hard to pinpoint one. And it's more so, it's hard. It's hard being Black here in Rainier Valley. It's difficult.
What makes it hard?
Not being able to relate to everybody. Not being able to, you have to go out and go to events and, be in places where you're able to relate to someone, to find someone who's going to be able to relate to you. Some people are not as open as others, and being able to connect and share stories and experiences, it empowers you to show your Blackness, to be comfortable in your skin, and being able to speak on it.
Thank you. Now, well, I'm gonna go over here to Mr. Bellis. Based off of what you have heard today about experiencing Blackness. Now, when I look at you, I see a white male. I don't know what your background is, but again, we're talking about experiencing Blackness. Based off of what you have heard from our panelists, from all of our guests, what do you take out of this discussion that we're having now, experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley? What are you getting out of this? What are you seeing?
What I have noticed is that we all experience our nationalities, our cultures in our own ways. And obviously, as a Black American, there is that feeling of racial
Inequality.
Inequality. Thank you. there is that feeling of inequality, and then that bond that you all face that, and you have to. There's a sense of pride in that we are all together. We're all facing this together, and together we can defeat it. And on that note, I also think it's very interesting how through the generations, identifying yourself as Black has changed. In that back in the day, 1/4 or 1/16 of being Black made you Black. Now, sometimes we get to identify ourselves as mixed, like Taylor Green has said. Things are beginning to change as far as identity is concerned, and I find that fascinating.
Again, this is what this is everyone's experience. And so again, I'm gonna go back to you guys up here, but I want to go to our audience again. And so would you mind telling us who you are? And then we'll start off by telling us what brought you here today.
My name is Marta. My friend Fabian, who introduced herself earlier, actually told me about this event right before it was happening. So I want to say thank you. I would also like to thank the panelists because, in all honesty, I identify with both of them because I am the child of immigrant parents. My family is from Eritrea, but I was born and raised here. So that the trying to find where you fit is hard here, being the child of immigrant parents, because you have your family and we have I would say a large Eritrean community in this area. There may be a specific way they expect me to be or carry myself, or even the way I wear my hair is a thing. Having natural hair is a thing in my own community. And I also relate to Taylor because those spaces where you feel you need to change the way you speak, that's a real thing that happens in my eyes to all Black people. Having to code switch in that way or constantly change your level of Blackness to constantly try and make everyone else around you comfortable is something that I feel like a lot of Black people have to deal with, because I don't necessarily even speak this way all the time. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it's a very clear picture of the way you're constantly having to pay attention to who you are, what you're saying, what you're doing, the way you look. Yes, there is the question that you asked earlier about do you feel like you carry your entire race with you? Like, do people see all Black people when they look at me? I live my whole life that way. Like, I have to be polite to you because I know that at some point you're going to run to another person that looks like me and that you might treat them poorly just based off your interaction with me. So now I have to make sure that I carry myself. The inability to show your real emotions in a public space is a thing. Like, that's something I struggled with for a long time. Not being angry in a public place is something I had to keep in check, just because it's a stereotype that being a Black woman and being angry is a thing. But I can't even be justifiably upset. Like, that's not allowed. Other people can be angry, and I'm constantly having to check my emotions, the way I carry myself. And it's always, sometimes it doesn't stop. Like, you're doing it subconsciously. You don't even realize that you're doing it. And then you find yourself saying something like, wait, why did I say that in that way? Or like, I'll catch myself sometimes and like, am I doing that because that's what I would really say? Or am I saying this in order to make the people around me feel okay with my presence? That's an insane thing, but it also comes with a high level of awareness in the way that you operate. But I think that comes with being Black. And I think everyone does it, whether they're aware or not.
Thank you. And so if I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but I believe I hear to some extent, maybe with the exception of Kelly, and you have a microphone, Kelly, so you correct me if I'm wrong here. But I think I just heard everybody get comfortable and say, in Rainier Valley, even in this multicultural, they say the most diverse community, it sounded to some extent like everybody in here felt like they had to represent all black people, and it felt like it wasn't necessarily a safe place to have a conversation in the tone that you would like. Now, and maybe I heard you say differently, Kelly. Maybe you were more comfortable, but so I don't want to put that on everyone. But I want to go here to someone and who's white, and just do you feel that when you come across African Americans, blacks, African immigrants, that they are changing their tone, their conversation to make you more comfortable? Are you aware of that at all, or do you think it happens, or do you think I don't really see that? And tell us who you are.
My name's Chris. My name's Chris. I actually live in Burien, not in the Rainier Valley, so I'm a little bit of an outsider, but I'm enjoying hearing what everybody has to say. So your question was whether I perceive people doing a code switching, adjusting, maybe for my benefit or for whatever benefit. And so to question number one, I'm not sure if I've been aware of that in the past. And then what was the second part of the question?
That was essentially it. And how do you respond, or do you notice it? If you don't notice it, if you do notice it, how do you respond to it? Does it that people are potentially changing? And again, you use the word code switching to make you more comfortable. You identify that, or have you ever identified it and said, okay, well, wait a minute, how do I get this back to a place of comfort for everyone involved?
Well, I think to a certain extent, anytime interacting with people, especially people that I don't know, it's my job to make sure that they recognize that they're safe and that I'm hearing them and that I want to pay attention to them. And so with anyone, especially people, if there's a systematic power differential, something like that, I'm going to do what I can to try and make them feel safe so that I can interact with them as a human being. That's my job.
And you say that's your job. Why is it your job?
I mean, it's my job as an individual to do that.
What makes it your job? What makes it your job to do that?
I'm not sure where the obligation to be a human being with other human beings comes from. But it's that's what I'm defining as a job, is an inner sense of like, if I'm interacting with you and you're a human being, then it's my responsibility to do what I can to make that interaction a safe one, and to make sure that I'm hearing what's true about you, and for me to do the same thing in return.
Okay, I think that, and that's good. And I think that what you're defining as a job is something that some people don't see as their responsibility. And what we have had folks in this room say who are African American is, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. I have to do this. I have no choice. But you say you're accepting it. So Virginia, I want to get some feedback and commentary on you. This was your experiencing blackness in Rainier Valley. This was your idea. This was your concept. What are you hearing right now? What are you, based off of the conversation that you're hearing, what is going through your mind? What do you want to share with folks about what you've heard? And again, these are just these individuals who are in the room, and they've all said different things, but then there are some similes within their conversation as well. What have you heard?
Well, one of the most important things that each time we have done this monthly series, every single one of them sort of confirms this need to create these opportunities for people to really talk about their own experience in a way that they can be entirely truthful and they can interact with each other in a way that's really valuable. So what I'm recognizing is just that it's a really good opportunity for people to do that. So it's really informative to listen to what people have to say and what their histories are and what their personal experiences are. So thanks.
Okay, and I'm not pressuring you, but I want to get deeper than that. Okay, what have you heard have you garnered anything from the conversations that you've heard today about experiencing Blackness as a person who I don't think identifies as Black? Experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley, what does that mean to you today? Experiencing Blackness, what are you experiencing that you would call Blackness? Because you're hearing from people who are identifying as Black, so you're caught up in this experience whether you like it or not. So what is it now that you are experiencing that is called Blackness? What are those things?
Well, one of the things I did deliberately was to not define what Blackness was in developing the topic. So what I'm hearing is what other people's definitions of Blackness are. And as part of my job in maintaining history of this area, I'm very aware of the historical different types of Blackness and the different people that live here. And I'm seeing some of that as being displaced and lost, but also very much still here. So being able to much more personalize that with individual people is really a good opportunity.
All right, thank you. Once again, you're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.World. It's me, your host, Tony B. Mardi Gras is going on outside of us. Our panelists are Kelly O'Brien and also Taylor Corrine Benton. And now we had an opportunity to hear from the audience a little bit. And I just wanted to go back to our panelists in here. And I want this question to be for both of you, and I might ask this question to all of you, and we'll see if we see some consistencies. And the question is, and I'll start with you, Kelly. Can you tell us about the everyday for you, from where you come from? And you talked about this. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Martha. You kind of talked about this a little bit, but can you tell us, Kelly, about the everyday microaggressions that you experience in Seattle, in Rainier Valley, and you know what I mean, those verbal, those nonverbal, those environmental slight, maybe snubs or insults, again, that we're calling microaggressions, whether they're intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile or derogatory or negative messages that you feel like target marginalized groups, and in this instance, Black people. What are those everyday microaggressions, or do they not exist? Am I just talking about something that is not reality?
No, microaggressions definitely exist. I mean, I kind of want to answer this question, but I'm like pulling in a lot of what folks have been speaking about, and sort of like jumping onto one of the last things I said, which was you sort of can't be in the room without sort of the legacy of racism sort of hanging over there. That's how microaggressions occur, I feel, in my experience. A lot of people in their everyday language and their everyday interaction with folks come with certain racist attitudes. And it's really, it's a result of this sort of like systemic racist machine that exists in the States and in the wider world. I mean, so, personally, I think it's easy for me to say, yeah, I experience what you would think of as typical microaggressions. I also cannot exercise any sort of anger without being viewed as dangerous or whatever. I also need to make sure people know that I am on the street behind them or next to them or whatever when I'm walking, so that they don't get frightened and Lord knows what happens. I also have to... I've also been
in Rainier Valley. You feel that way in Rainier Valley?
Nope. I'm trying to remember that now. Actually, I want to say yes. It's not something that you turn on and turn off. Black folks will encounter you with racist ideas as well. I feel like, and as an immigrant, sort of going back in my mind in my memory, a lot of being here is not being from here and knowing that you're not from here and like being careful. So I want to say like I've experienced that in Rainier Valley, but like not to the extent with which I experienced it walking downtown, for instance, where it's a lot more white folks, you know. But you can't, you know, people who are brown and black can get away from racist behaviors and stuff too. It's there. It sort of permeates everything that we live and experience. And so, you know, internalized racist oppression is a real thing. You know, people come with ideas that have been developed about them, you know, through the way in which we tell stories about who people are. So, I mean, I've experienced microaggressions more so in sort of like Seattle Metro downtown in that way, and at the workplace, and in sort of white spaces and white-led institutional spaces. But, you know, not, you know, but in this neighborhood, I would say sort of like any sort of like trepidation I had was the immigrant sort of taking over in that way. If I were to sort of think back on it. And I only moved from this area about 2 years ago, so yeah. I think you have to, you know, I don't know. It's a weird way to sort of like remain here, because again, remember from the beginning, I started talking about how I felt just fine in this area, and felt quite comfortable. But I want to say, like, I walked around in the middle of the night here, you know, a few occasions for sure, and definitely wanted people to know who I was if I was coming up behind them and it was dark or whatever, you know, so that nothing would pop off, you know?
That's how you felt. No one said to you, "You're making me feel dangerous." No one said to you, or no woman grabbed her purse tighter because you were walking towards her or behind her. No one did anything, and correct me if I'm wrong here, to make you feel that way. But you felt that way anyways, even though you said this was a safe place for you. And
do you remember, Tony? Do you remember every time somebody like kind of clutched their purse at you or kind of skittled away a little bit? I feel like that experience is something that happens so much that at a certain point
it does happen. It happens.
But you mean like here? You mean like here? And I see. It's weird. It's weird for me to say like it didn't happen here, because I feel like I've walked around like late at night and seen folks sort of hanging out and stuff, and made sure to be like, "Hey, what's up?" You know, as I'm walking by. You know what I'm saying? So that people know who's here. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that sort of behavior carries with you. You just raise it by degrees or not, depending upon where you are. You know? But I can't, like, you know.
Kelly, I felt like if we left out of here and walked down the street right now, that both of us would and this is just me saying this, and I might be wrong. I feel like if you and I just got out right now and just walked down the street, there would be some folks who would look at us and we would feel the same way. We would feel like, okay, we got to make them comfortable.
Right.
Do you disagree with that?
No. Like, especially how the neighborhood has changed, for sure. In fact, you know, and it's constantly in my mind. In fact, it happened today. As I came here, walking around, you know, with the memory of the fact that I've walked up and down these streets before, you know, years ago, but now, you know, I'm here. It's a different time. I'm wondering, how do I present? How am I dressed? You know, who's going to want to mess with me or who's not going to want to mess with me? You know, went into the establishment across the street, and, you know, mostly white folks celebrating Mardi Gras, you know, and, you know, you just kind of stay to yourself and do what you got to do before I come over here. It's weird. But then I saw a black person. I saw a black woman who was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going over to Rainier Avenue Radio." And she was like, "Tell Tony I said hi." Right. And so, you know, that happens too, you know, and so, yeah, definitely there are folks that maybe I could have. And so, you know, I went in there. And I probably did not overtly say to myself, or even try to say to myself, I need to make these people comfortable. But it's very, you know, I'm quiet. I walked in very quietly, asked very nicely for things, kept all my stuff together right by me, didn't mess with the person to my right, didn't mess with the white lady to my left, just looked straight ahead, ordered my stuff, got it, and then was up and going before your friend came in. So,
and so it sounds like you were uncomfortable. And we asked the question about community and who do you see as your community? So you saw a black woman, and then the name came up, and then it was like, okay, everything's all good. We're comfortable.
well, we're comfortable. Yeah, for sure.
You and that person.
Yeah.
We're comfortable.
We're comfortable. Yeah, and that's how it felt, and that's how I feel a lot of the time. I mean, you know, it's
But
not
the
to say
not
that
the rest of the room.
It's not to feel like I can't feel comfortable with white folks, you know, because, you know, after all, Virginia invited me here, you know what I'm saying? I feel comfortable around Virginia, right? But I don't know what you could be thinking over there. And I am a big black guy. And with big black men, there is no degree of mitigation of stopping the event. For big black men, it's either you're cool, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but for big black men, it's either you're cool or you're dead.
You're cool or
you're cool or you're dead.
Dead.
Like to stop us, to like for somebody who thinks that you're a threat when you're a big black man, to stop a big black man threat, they stop a big black man threat. They don't headlock a big black man threat. They don't arm lock a big black man threat. They stop a big black man threat. So in my mind, I don't want any sort of danger that could exist to that level where I am making somebody uncomfortable or feeling threatened and stuff, because you could literally die. I could literally die.
And that's how you feel.
Yeah.
That's what's going on inside of you. I don't know if anybody out here, and I see somebody raise their hand, I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but that's just something that you carry with you every day.
Yep.
Despite your educational background, despite your work history.
That's right.
You feel like a big black man who's either cool or going to be dead. You wanted to comment, Ramiro?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Being a big black man, either you're cool or dead. It's either or. It's no in between. It's one or the other. And hopefully they think you're cool that day. You know what I mean? So it's a challenging thing to be into, because it's not something that you feel like you want to be in, but it's just because who you are and what you look like and what they feel you stand for. That's just how it is. It's rough.
Even in Rainier Valley?
It's rough.
Okay. Taylor Queen, I wanted you to answer the same question about microaggressions. If you talk about everyday microaggressions that you experience, if you experience them, again, some of the same things, those everyday verbal or non-verbal or environmental slights, or things that are unintentional or intentional, that communicate hostile or derogatory or negative messages. Do you experience those microaggressions? And for you, what are they?
I'm going to get right back to that. But you said something earlier about why it should be your duty to do whatever you do towards Black people. And I guess it's a question directed towards the audience, like, you know, mostly the white people in the audience. How do you use your privilege to help others and be an ally to Black people? Okay, and then back to what you were saying. I experienced my most microaggressions at SAS. So in my 8th grade, I was usually either the only Black kid in the classroom or one of 2 Black kids. And there's this teacher named Sonia. She was an English teacher. I didn't like her at all. And we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And the N-word obviously comes up a lot in the book. And I remember every time a kid would say the N-word, they would always look directly at me. And we had to go around the class saying the N-word. And I felt so uncomfortable and I guess targeted in a way, because I remember some of the white kids, they said it with such gumph, I guess the word is, and like, yeah, I know what that word is, that I didn't feel safe in that environment. It didn't help that the teacher would be surprised that I knew a word or that I had some success in my lifetime, because whenever she did, she said, oh, I didn't realize you knew that. Or TC, do you know what that means? Because most of the teachers couldn't say Taylor Corrine, you know, could say Schwarzenegger just fine. So that was a weird thing. And then also in, like, when I'm walking down the hallways, I am like a big person because I'm like 5'11". I consider myself, wide shouldered. So I already do, have to try to put a smile on my face. It doesn't help that Marta, right, was saying about having to watch your temperament, because already in school without expressing any, not necessarily feelings, but like saying anything, there's already a stereotype that, oh, TC's going to beat you up if you say anything wrong. And I didn't know how that came to be because I knew I didn't say anything in class because I was already too scared of what, if I say something wrong, then what are they going to think of me? Are they going to judge me because I have my hair like this? Are they going to judge me because my skin tone is like this? So I was already watching my steps pretty closely, and it didn't help that I would hear murmurs after I walked past some students in class, or that the teacher in 9th grade would say, some of us are more related to gorillas than others. And so, that was an experience. Yeah, it's not a cool thing. It doesn't help either. I'm going on a little tangent rant, but I was trying to start a BSU at SAS, and can I cuss or no?
Can you what?
Okay.
You pretty much cuss by asking.
Well, okay, because
just go ahead.
Because there's a head of school at SAS. Her name is Connor Laurie, and she's a gay Black woman. She said some stuff. So I said no. I'll just say,
if you are repeating something that somebody said,
these are her direct words, I promise.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right, cool. So there's a meeting going on, and I'm trying to start with a few other Black students at SAS, and she said, "Are you ready? Are you like, okay?" And she said, "We want to keep this a place from bitching about white people." Are you okay? Okay.
So sweet.
And that was really astonishing to me because, one, I feel like as not only a gay woman, but as a Black woman, knowing the struggle that most Black students go through, you're supposed to be the one who is empowering us. And you look a little worried. Okay. Who is supposed to be empowering us and helping us through these difficult times. And instead she says, no, if you're going to have an association where people can gather, it has to be either a multicultural association or racial association, which I didn't appreciate, because I feel like there is a constant thing where it's like, there's a constant question of why are you not like these other students? Why do you not have the same hair texture as these other students? Why are you not this exact skin tone as other students? Yet there is always a constant pushback of, well, you can be different as long as you don't stray too far from the path. And I feel like that's what she was placing on me. Yet there is also, how I've been saying, this, I guess, aura of be different, fight for what you want. Yet it's hard to fight for what you want when the person you're supposed to look up to is telling you to stop and back down.
All right, you're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.World. This is Rainier Valley Historical Society presents the Dismantling Racism series. This particular event is experiencing Blackness in Rainier Valley. And what you are hearing is people who live in the community, just everyday people, giving commentary about their experience. And I hope everybody in the room is comfortable with what we're doing here. And again, some folks came to experience what was going on. And so I'm going to go back to the first person that I started with, and just, in honesty, and people are being honest here. You've heard pretty much everyone say that when they see someone like you, they change tones, that they try to make you comfortable. So my question to you is one, honestly, are you uncomfortable when you are in this community and you are approached by, walk by, have someone who is black, or as I'll even be more specific, as Kelly said, a big black man, does that make you uncomfortable? And it's okay to be honest, whatever the answer is. If it's not, if it is.
I mean, I guess to be honest, like if I'm a woman who walks most places alone, and if it's dark and I'm on the street, I think any man is gonna make me a little bit on edge, and I probably do have unconscious biases that where I'm a little more alert if it's black man, but I may try to correct those, but that's something that's like hard to correct for in living in the U.S. I want to put myself in situations more where I'm just getting to know more black people and getting to be around a community, and where I'm learning from people so that people don't feel like they have to act a certain way around me or accommodate me. I guess it's hard to know the extent to which people are doing that when I'm not going to be there when there's no white people around. So I don't know, necessarily how people act when there's no white people around. But I believe that people act differently, or they're more comfortable or less on guard. And I hope that we can reach a place where people are comfortable being themselves around me. So anything I can do to facilitate that, I want to try. But.
Can I ask a question? So do you see this? I mean, you just described your individual experience with the question, but do you see this as your individual, as an individual based choice and thing where people could decide to feel more comfortable around you because you've shown that you're more comfortable to be around? Or can you complicate this in any, is that the story, or are there systemic cues in place where you can intellectualize and you can rationalize what you're saying now, but if you go outside and there are 5 guys sitting on a corner, and let's say there are 5 black men, but there's 1 white guy with a really good suit walking across the street, and you have your choice to walk on this side of the street with the 5 black guys that are standing on the corner talking, wearing regular clothes, or you could cross and be where the white guy in a 3-piece suit and an expensive briefcase is walking. Can you say now with that in your head that it could be that kind of individual decision? I just hope people feel more comfortable around me.
I don't know. See if I understand your question. So are you asking if I understand that as an individual decision that I would make to choose which?
No, to put yourself in that situation in your mind, and then to put in the factor that you introduced, whereas you said, I would hope that I'm paraphrasing, but I would hope basically as time and familiarity increases, folks will be able to feel comfortable around me, right? And I want to know if this is if that's it. If once people feel comfortable and stuff around you, if it's all good, if it's cool, or are there other factors in place that are more systemic and beyond the individual that are helping you to have an attitude or to make a decision with respect to that particular situation?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of systemic factors at play, and I don't know that things are ever going to be cool or better or just okay. But I guess I don't know fully how to answer your question.
I guess I'm just trying to say, I don't know. I feel maybe I felt your answer was really simple, and that there are just more parts to it than that, and I just wanted to challenge you a little bit.
Okay. I think I don't know what else to say. Sorry, I think I have to think about that more.
I think with like what you're saying, Kelly, I feel like no matter your race and depending on who you are, growing up, you are instilled with all these biases, especially from media and television, where no matter what, you may feel uncomfortable around a black dude, even if you are black. Because I know at least I do. I mean, maybe I have more right to be since I'm younger and I have like fully experienced the world. But I know at least for me, I think more about my surroundings and my safety before I think about the dude. So I feel like in that case, it may not necessarily be unfair, but I feel like no matter what, you're still raised with implicit bias. Like, hey, is that a black dude or a white dude? What's the black dude wearing? What's the white dude wearing? You're going through all these situations in your head, but by the time that's already been processed, you're already down the street.
All right. And I'm going to come back to you, man. So what do you remember when I first came over to you and you said, no, I don't really want to talk. It's not really, you felt a little uncomfortable, right? Did you feel uncomfortable? Or you felt comfortable? Yeah, you were uncomfortable. You were uncomfortable. What you are hearing is something that people carry with them all the time. And I gave you the opportunity to get comfortable. You said you didn't want to talk. I asked you a couple questions. Let me get him comfortable and ease you into this conversation so that you could be comfortable. So having done that and being aware that that was a conscious effort on my part so that you could feel comfortable. And you've just heard people describe, I get no comfort zone. I just get thrown into this mix and I have to adjust and I have to find a way to make people feel comfortable, even if I don't feel comfortable. That's just, it is what it is. And if I don't, there's all kind of potential backlash. They're going to think all black people are evil, or all black people won't talk to me, or all black women have an attitude, or whatever. And so they make this conscious decision without a comfort zone. Having said that to you, now as you've made the decision to come here. And so part of having this discussion is being uncomfortable. That's just what it is. It's just it's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. So I want to get some commentary from you now about your attitude in coming here and what you've heard as a white male and your position of privilege. Either you see it as a position of privilege, maybe you don't see it as a position of privilege. But Taylor Corrine had asked the question that she had wanted the audience is, what will you do in your position of privilege? Or you know what? Maybe you can continue to just go on and not even worry about it.
So the question is, what will I do with my privilege?
Based off of what you're hearing today. And it could be, nothing's changing, man.
No, things will. Well, I sincerely hope that things will change with me, and that's very much who I want to be. In the depths of my heart, really. So maybe before I get into how I want to use my privilege to be a white ally, I just want to say I'm sad to hear these things from, to hear you say I have to change the way I talk, or I have to put on this face, or this I have to change the way I present myself when I see people. It just, to hear you say I don't feel comfortable in this neighborhood, I'm just sad to hear that. And it doesn't surprise me, but it does as well too. I would expect, at least I came here thinking tonight that African Americans would feel more comfortable in this neighborhood than they have expressed tonight. So anyway, all that to say, I'm sorry to hear that. So as far as how to be a white ally, first of all,
does that feel like pressure? Like she's like, you're pressuring me.
No, I don't. It doesn't feel like doesn't pressure me. As far as how to be a white ally, well, first of all, I think I'm only an ally when a person of color tells me I'm an ally. I think a lot of times people kind of get into a savior complex, or white people get into a savior complex and end up saying things for people or expressing things for people, and I don't think that's very helpful. But the way I want to be an ally is I would really like to use the voice and the spaces that I have to really amplify like the kinds of things I'm hearing tonight, you know. And so I guess I want to try to do that in the spheres of influence I have. So
Can I do a response?
Yeah, please.
Tell us your name again.
My name. I never said my name to begin with. my name is Stu Bowerman. Thank you.
Hi, Stu.
Hey.
I wanted to respond to that and sort of like ask and comment type thing, but I think it was 2016 when I started saying things like, you know what, we don't need any more allies. We need accomplices. We need we need co-conspirators, right? And other people started saying that stuff. But I mean, it's really like, it's interesting that to be a white ally, and I hear what you're saying. You're saying you wish to avoid the white savior complex, so you know that to be considered an ally, you must be called an ally by someone of color or a black person, right? That's what I heard you say. Is that right? Okay. Well, I mean, that's interesting. And people could tell who their allies are very easily. It's when you're back against the wall, who's going to jump in front of that bullet for you, all right? And that's a serious thing. That's one. Two, I think the question of what to do about racism, and this is a series called Dismantling Racism. Well, in order for white folks to contribute to dismantling this system of oppression that's been set up to maintain economic relationships, I think one of the first things that white folks maybe should encounter and understand and know is that, see how we're having this conversation about what it means to be black? Well, black people talk about this all the time. And people of color talk about what it means to be othered all the time. But white people don't talk about what it means to be white at all. They never actually sit down and say, okay, guys, let's unpack this whiteness that we have. What does it mean? You very easily hear people start to talk about being Irish and French and German and stuff. But that's ethnicity. In our society, we've conflated those things, race and ethnicity. But race itself is a false construct. I mean, as we sit here talking about blackness today, we were mixing it all up. Black is race, black is culture, black is history, black is this, black is that. We're all mixing it up, but race is false. So, but white folks do walk around knowing that whatever I am, whatever you are, whatever Tony is, it's not what they are. And I just feel like that should be part of a conversation. If you want to answer the question, like, what can I do? How can I start breaking down this thing? From the time you start to unpack what it means for you to be white and what that means, you'll start to see the scaffolding falling away.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a journey for me. I don't necessarily feel like tonight's the place to really unpack all of it. But I did mention a few minutes ago that I'd moved to this neighborhood. And the reason I did was because, I learned about the racial covenants in our city. And I learned that every neighborhood I'd ever grown up in enforced racially restrictive covenants. And I couldn't live with myself knowing that about myself. And so my decision to move south of the Ship Canal was a decision to really reject a lot of the privilege that I had grown up with. And so I know it's a journey, I think, and I've tried to engage it as best as I can. But I appreciate the encouragement to
I
continue.
guess the question you could ask yourself is whether or not the system is going to let you give up your privilege. That's a good question.
That's a good question.
So you do know that when you cross the Ship Canal bridge, you bring that privilege with you. It doesn't stay in North Seattle. And I wanna get back to you just because in your conversation you were talking about the difficulty that you had in just finding who you were. An African immigrant, a black person. So we talk about this concept of blackness, experiencing blackness, and then on top of everything that goes along with trying to form relationships and meet people. You were talking about Franklin. There's just this thing that high school is just rough anyway, no matter who you are. So now, again, I just want to give you the microphone and let you speak a little bit about being here this evening and what you've heard. Is this what you expected to hear from both folks, whether they've identified as black, whether they've identified as immigrant, whether they have appeared to be white and came from that particular position? What have you heard today? What have you thought today?
What I've thought today is there's many other individuals that have the same type of experiences as me. And being able to formulate that and be able to speak on it. And also sometimes, within my own culture, I've noticed that I have privilege. And I'm using that privilege to be able to mentor or even help and assist on other immigrants and other refugees who are entering the United States, and being able to have that dialogue and have that conversation with them and explain to them that, yeah, there is something different within us, but at the same time, me having this privilege and, within my own culture, being able, to be that child who, did everything right, or be able to be that that individual that I had to leave 2 hours away to, when I went to college was the first time that I heard the N-word be called to me, and have two experiences like that north from Seattle made me understand that I was really different, and being able
all the way to college.
To be, yeah, the N-word. And
where did you grow up?
Here.
In South Seattle?
Yeah, in South Seattle.
So do you consider that one of the benefits of being in South Seattle?
I do now. I went to, 2 hours away north, went to Bellingham to experience that type of derogatory experience towards me and my friends, and being the only maybe few black people on campus, and I have the tendency to not interact with a lot of people because, again, they have that stereotype that you're going to be a certain way. And like Martha said earlier, is the fact that if you do speak up, you're going to be the angry black woman. If you do speak up for yourself, you're going to be placed in a category. And, being able to come here and listen to Terry and have the same type of experiences, and when he was saying about walking down the street, I remember vividly walking down Othello while it was dark, and I remember crossing the street because there was someone behind me. And I could remember it was an African American man, and realizing that and being aware is like, I don't think it was because of the race. I think it was just because I'm young, and that might be a situation I'm trying to avoid. Yeah.
Well, you know, the thing is, I don't want everybody to think that we have this thing, you know, called suspicion for a reason. You know, it's something that we have because we need to identify being in dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, you know, that we have this. The problem is that when society, you know, tells us that certain things are going to be uncomfortable for us. I'll tell you about an experience, and Marta, I want you to talk next, okay? So, but I'll tell you about an experience that I had when I went to Finland. And I went to Finland, and it was about 2:30 in the morning, and I just come from the casino, and I saw an older white woman walking towards me. 2:30 in the morning, people are just out on the street in Finland. I don't know why. But saw an older white woman walking towards me, and Kelly, you know what I did. Initially, without even thinking about it, I said, let me make her comfortable because she's walking towards me. It's 2:30 in the morning. I'm a big black guy, and I'm in a foreign country. I'm really not trying to have this turn out wrong.
Right.
You know? And so as she's walking towards me, she looks at me, and she gets this big smile on her face, and she smiles at me, and I smile at her, and I remembered I'm in a country that doesn't have the same history of racism from the country that I came to. Now, I can tell you more about that particular experience, but that was one of the differences. And one of the things that I remember was, okay, well, I want to find out about where culture is. And so I found out that there was a store that sold hip hop music. And I'll be damned. That's where the culture was. In Helsinki. It was at this hip hop store. And they had a t-shirt. And I brought one back with me because in this country, it would mean something different than it meant in that country. And the t-shirt read, "Black music for white people." Now, you know, if somebody ran around in here with a shirt that said, "Black music for white people," what we would think. And so I asked the guy, I said, "Black music for white people, what does that mean?" He's like, "Oh man, just much respect for the music that you have and our way of showing appreciation for you as creators of this music. And it's just about," and I was like, wow. But I still can't wear this when I get back to the States because I'll have to do a whole bunch of talking. Anyway, that was just my addition. So, Marta, I want you to be able to say what you want to say, but I want you to do something for me, okay? And I don't know how you're going to do it, but first I want to say, everybody white, just relax, all right? It's not going down. Everybody's cool. Everybody's comfortable. But again, I have to say this because I want Marta to be comfortable, like I wanted you to be comfortable. And so, Marta, I would like you, from your perspective, to tell the white folks who are here and the white folks who are listening on the radio what you would like, so that you don't have to be, so that the way we're talking now, you feel this everywhere you go, any place that you go. You don't feel like you have to restrict yourself. What would you say right now to the white folks who are here? And you know this is difficult because when you walk out this door, some of those biases are going to kick back in. It's just going to. But while we're in this room, I want you to feel free to say, what should they do to make you feel more comfortable? Or what would you like to share that will make you feel like you can be you anytime you want to, wherever you go, especially in Rainier Valley?
Okay. So that is a very complicated question. It is.
But I try to remove
But
people from the equation.
how? Oh,
So
I was like, huh?
How do you
That's
do
not.
that?
I was like, how? That's not a possibility because Kelly touched on it earlier. Because there are 500 years of this. I have this conversation with, like you said, many people. Many people have these same conversations, both black, white, whatever race. Because of the current climate that we're in, it's becoming common conversation. In the workplace, where I go, I have these conversations often. I had a coworker tell me that she was not aware of her own white privilege until recently. Essentially, someone had to tell her what it was and explain it to her. She goes, I didn't know. And we had a really open dialogue about it. It's conversations like this. It's people being honest about their biases and the thing that you were touching on earlier is really ugly, right? The idea of being afraid of a black man. It's a really ugly thing because that black man did nothing to deserve this, yet a lot of people have these biases. And Taylor was the one who said it earlier. It's because of what's portrayed like in media, whatever. These things don't even just happen here. It's worldwide. Like these biases, that's why they happen even in places like where my family is from. Like in other African countries, they have preconceived notions of black people in America that are negative in the same way that you're saying that white people do, the same way that black people here do. The same way you see a black man and you walk across that thing that you're talking about, it's something that is portrayed to us, and there is a lot of power in what you see. So I think a lot of that stems from that, and that's something that if you read a lot about history, it makes you go, I don't know if it's ever going to change. If you read, if you educate yourself, it makes you go, I don't know. I don't know if that's a possibility. I think honest, open conversation, but I can understand how it would be difficult to even start this conversation, because how do you bring it up? As a black person, you just turn to the white person next to you and say, hey, like, your white privilege, what's going on? Wait. Hold on. There's something I want to touch on before we move on. Okay. So, Taylor, what you said, just to be honest, you said something earlier, and I kind of touched on it earlier too. Like, in your formative years, or like as a youth, these things are shown to you, right? As like, I guess truths or whatever, like ways you're supposed to carry yourself, the way you're supposed to operate. I had a similar experience when I was Faven and I know each other from Western. So when I was at school and they played a Dave Chappelle clip, and it was, if anybody remembers, the Nigger Family. And they played this in a class full of 300 students. There are 4 black people in the audience. And now we have to have discussion. It was the most awkward thing. I will never forget that moment, because everyone's watching it, and I'm sure everybody watched it individually. If anybody remembers how popular Dave Chappelle was at the time, everyone was watching the show. So they were laughing at it in private, but now you can't laugh at it because now you're not by yourself. So now everyone is quiet and everyone's watching this. And now every single punchline is coming and no one laughed. And we finish and we have to have discussion. And in the end, I think I may have addressed one person in the classroom during discussion, during the actual discussion itself. But then I remember vividly, after the class was over, the black people, all of us are outside and we're having a discussion in private, because the truth is, didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel safe in this space, even though this is my school, I pay tuition like everybody else, and I still don't feel comfortable discussing this in front of everyone. And it was literally built for that. It was race and social justice course. Yeah. So I'm saying even in those spaces, it's uncomfortable. Or it was difficult for people to feel like it was okay. But I feel like these things, you start to become more comfortable in who you are as you get older. That's how I feel. That's how I really feel. Because you touched on it, because you said youth. You were talking about your age. The truth is, as I've gotten older, I've become more accepting of myself, the way I move, the way I operate, so I can feel comfortable in more and more spaces. I have these conversations, like I said, the conversation we're having here, I've had it in my workplace with multiple people, and in two different positions or fields or whatever you want to call it. So I think the climate is changing. I think people are having these discussions with each other, but in all honesty, I don't know what the outcome will be. I don't know if there will ever be. I'm just being honest. I'm being super honest. I don't know if there's ever an outcome where black people will feel safe, comfortable, whatever you want to call it, here. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because how do you erase the thing? Like I said, it's 500 years of this. These are preconceived notions. They've been drilled into you. You see it all the time. So how do you?
I'd love to like kind of answer you because like one of the things that we say in the work that I do is, you know, in creating racial equity, we're trying to create a world that we've never seen before. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it would operate. It's new, and we have all kinds of starts and stops. You know, first it was diversity training, and then folks realized, well, that kind of wasn't working. So then it kind of developed to more stuff. You know, and I wanted to say the same thing. I wanted to say, wow, Taylor, like when you recounted some of the microaggressions, I was like, gosh, I could remember and go back in time and remember some specific microaggressions, but literally I am too old now. And like they happen enough times. I want to say one thing sort of to be fair to our audience, and to some of the interactions and dialogue we had tonight is that, you know, this question of Blackness, what is Blackness, or question of racism in society, the question of like that moment that we were speaking about, you know, avoiding the black male in the street as opposed to the white male or whatever. You know, one of the things I want to say is that, you know, we should definitely acknowledge that the most dangerous thing for a woman on this planet is a man. And so like that's a real truth that is added to that conversation, because when black folks are racialized, you know, the gendering of the racialization happens as well, where aggressiveness, you know, violence and stuff like that are absolutely valid concerns for women, and for everybody, but for women, do come to play. And so, you know, it's not simple, it's not easy. You got to think through things. You have to unpack historical lies. But like, you know, I wanted to acknowledge that, you know, women definitely have a reason to be cautious of men in for many reasons. You know?
All right. I'm going to start to wrap it up here. I want to do something, though, because Marta, I asked you to speak to the white folks. You didn't really speak to the white folks. And we're just being comfortable. You know, I said, and so this is what I'm saying. I said, so this is something that I mean. Okay, just watch this. For those of you, this is theater of the mind. I'm walking over to Kelly right now. What's up, bro? You see what that is? It doesn't matter. Now, if I walk over here, I'm gonna say, hey, how you doing? How are you? You see? Okay. You see the difference? You know, and I know that you've seen black people greet each other before. And so I'm just saying that if you see me on the street, because like I said, Marta, let me greet you and don't judge me. But not just me. You know what I mean? That was just me and him. But there's me and him out there. And so I'm sorry, tell me your name again. Chris, as Chris was saying, this is my job. So that's one of the things that I would ask, is that you maybe take the initiative to greet someone in a way that they feel comfortable. And maybe if a black guy comes up to you and says, hey, or you do, and you say, hey, how you doing? Then you go, oh, I'm good, bro. Yeah. Just like that. Yeah, just like that. See, this is a small group, and so we're doing some of these interactions. Okay, Marta, okay, you were looking at me too, like you want me to say something to the white girl. See? So if I was to do the same thing, this is what I want you to do, because we're going to close up here in a second. I would say, if you see me walking towards you, I want to say hi, you know, but there's so many conflicting things that are going through my mind. I think that if I smile and I say hi, you're probably going to think the black man is trying to get the white woman. And so I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want it to be on that level. I just want to say, hey, how you doing? Like I would say to this gentleman over here. So I don't know what it is that you would have to do to compensate for that. Because again, I know being a woman, okay, well, this may be interpreted as somebody, as me agreeing that, you know, hey, maybe there's some kind of connection there, because you know how people think. But just be aware that as black men, sometimes we just want to say hi. And we don't want you to act like you don't see us so that you can avoid saying hi. And we don't want you to, you know, look at us and look like, ooh, oh my gosh, what am I, trapped? You know, how do I get out of this? We know how to adjust to that. We know how to make you comfortable. So it happens automatically. Sometimes give us a break, all right? And think, I'm going to make this situation easier for everybody. And you don't have to. But we're having a discussion today called Experiencing Blackness. I do want to get some quick final words. And first of all, how about a round of applause for our panel? Because it took a lot of courage for them to be up there and do that, because you guys were sitting on your hands for a minute like, no, thank you. I don't want the microphone. So it took a lot of courage. And then again, I appreciate all of you. And I think that what we've seen in here, the thing about it, and for those of you who are on the radio who are not here, we've seen each other. I really sincerely think that at this point, when we see each other on the street, we're going to go, hey, how you doing? And I don't think that there will be quite the level of being uncomfortable that there was before. And so we weren't really trying to, at least I wasn't trying to come up with an answer to what experiencing blackness is, or an answer to what blackness is, as much as sharing the fact that it exists and we are all experiencing it together, because it is intrinsically intermingled with American history. So quick final words. Kelly, thank you for being here, man. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for sharing, you know, sometimes things that for you appeared to be contradictory to what you thought. Oh, man, I thought this, now I'm thinking this. But any final words for you on this conversation?
No, I just think people need to encounter, you know, race and racism for what it is. People should feel fine with acknowledging culture and history, and they should be willing to question the things which they never question. And that may seem really simple, but that's what it is. The things that you think are normal, why are they normal? Thank you.
All right. And Taylor Corrine.
First off, my first name is Taylor Corrine, so yeah. And also, if you want to bridge the gap of disconnect from generations, I would say consider the nuanced things instead of just lecturing. Actually talk with the youth and know that the span of like how long we actually remember stuff is not as long as usual, so like take that in mind. And also, if you want to stay in contact with me, I have a nonprofit, I have a club at school that I want to bring visitors, so you know, talk to me after this. Yeah.
All right. And so I'll close this with my personal statement. And first of all, thank you, Virginia, and for your persistence in dismantling racism and your passion in ensuring that we keep these conversations going and we have this kind of dialogue, because again, it's invaluable. And it's what we need to do, which segues into my closing statement. As much as I believe there is no such thing as race and it is a social construct, it ain't going anywhere. How else are we going to know who is disproportionately getting denied bank loans? How else are we going to know who's being admitted into institutions of higher education at a particular rate and who's not getting admitted? How else are we going to know who's getting stopped by the police indiscriminately if we don't factor in race? And I'm not saying, you know, I'm just saying it is so interwoven into our society that at this point, it's almost impossible to get rid of. I mean, just think about it. If we don't have the right, how do we do it if there's an emergency? Well, what do they look like? And you can't describe that person? And maybe there is a way to do it, but maybe we have just put ourselves in this place where we have been trapped into not being able to solve this social construct. I would thank everybody for coming, especially our audience members who maybe didn't come here with the idea of participating and participated anyways. Thank you very much. This is Rainier Avenue Radio. Remember, you can always walk through these doors. We will be broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have an exciting series of conversations that are going to take place. Tomorrow we have Lyrically We Stand. And so we have poets who are coming in who are going to share spoken word about heartbreak, romance, relationships in Black History Month. We'll also be having a conversation on journalism, about the impact of journalism on locally and nationally on Black Americans. We'll be having a conversation on health. We'll be discussing health disparities and how health impacts Black Americans. We'll also be having a conversation about education and the different options there are in education. We'll have a history of education, and you can come here and find out about how you can enroll in a historically Black college. There will also be admissions officers from the University of Washington. So we got a bunch of stuff going on. Check our calendar at RainierAvenueRadio.World, and you'll find about all the things that we are trying to do as now a fixture in the Columbia City area. And we hope to be part of this community, and we hope to make sure that everyone now knows that this is a safe place. And we will have discussions about many different things. And whatever that particular issue is, if it is a reflection of the diversity that we have in this community, then it is part of who we are as RainierAvenueRadio.World. Thank you all for coming. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. We'll be back with you again with a special program, Lyrically We Stand, tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.